Welcome, everybody, to an all-new Bleav in Chargers. Chargers fans, do you believe? Because I'll tell you this, sniff the roses. We're less than 2 weeks away from Chargers training camp. The fresh white paint on the field, the smell of the fresh blades of grass. It's time to hit the pigskin low, Neal. I know it's just July. Next time you wake up, it's going to be September. We're going to be locking in at Sundays at 10 in the morning. Tell me once, baby. How you doing?
One word, legendary, brother. I'm feeling great, Borna. It's always great to talk shop with you, talk football, especially when we talk about the Chargers and this young, exciting team and all the different moves they've made and all the things that we're looking forward to this season. Expectations, I know they're a little down from last year, but I think that we got a lot to be thankful for, and I think there's plenty of excitement that's swirling in the air right now, especially with preseason getting ready to kick off.
I can see the excitement in your eyes, man. You're looking better than ever, Low. I know you're ready for the upcoming 23-24 campaign, and I think there's a lot of storylines, right, that we can talk about the Chargers, and we already have this offseason. We've talked about some of the free agent acquisitions. We've talked about Austin Eckler and that contractual, obligation. I think that's an interesting one, but we already know the situation with that. He's got 1 year left on his deal. He's being a true professional. He's ducking his head down. He's going to try and get another deal. Let's put all that aside right now. J.C. Jackson, his bounce back impending year. So many storylines. Let's start with number 10 because we always talk about this. The organization goes with Justin Herbert. Now, it's important and it's imperative that he's put in positions to be successful. And I'd argue that he hasn't, so far in his young career, and still ESPN ranked Justin Herbert checking in as the top 5 quarterback in the National Football League. So let's dive into these rankings low. Let's go one by one until we get into Herbert in the top 5. I don't think there's any objections. Number 1's Patrick Mahomes. Any objections, Lorenzo, Neal?
None at all. I have no objection. I'm fine with that one.
And I hate to say he'll be in the AFC West a long time, but I believe Justin Herbert and the Chargers have a shot to dethrone him at some point. Number 2 is Joe Burrow. And I think I can't have any objections there. I think we've already argued that Herbert has more talent than Burrow, but Burrow has answered the bell more than Herbert has in the postseason. I think just because of that, you have to give Burrow over the nod at Josh Allen at number 3. Do you think those two should be flipped, or what are your thoughts at Burrow 2, Allen 3?
No, I don't think they should be flipped. I think when you think about the circumstances and look at what's going on and the way that Joe Cool has played the game. Joe Cool has played the game second, legendary. I think when you think about this young quarterback, his ability in the pocket, but if you think about what makes Joe Burrows to me so special and unique, is like you said, he's Joe Cool. Here's a guy that doesn't blink under pressure. Here's a guy that looked Mahomes dead in the eye and said, Mahomes, anything you can do, I can do better. Every time it's always a one-score game. Every single time these guys go at it, the two best quarterbacks go at it, it is a dogfight and it is always to the end. So when you think about what you've seen from this matchup and this legendary matchup between these two kids, this is a la Brady and Manning. You think about how Brady would get the best of Manning. Manning wasn't like Manning didn't have talent. They were always so close, but he just had an edge. So when you think about these two guys, I think that Joe Burrows, and for me, it's hard for me even to say if Joe Burrows would have been one, I wouldn't have just said, oh, I disagree. Because if you think about what Joe Burrows have done and you think about the organization he's at, and yeah, he has some weapons, but Joe Burrows, man, I'm telling you, the guy is clutch.
He has given Patrick Mahomes the most fits. I mean, and you never see Mahomes run into trouble. And you always know, though, that it seems like Burrow, he's going to break through. Like, you can never guarantee a quarterback's going to win a Super Bowl, but I think it's as surefire as a bet that you're going to see Joe Burrow hoist the Vince Lombardi trophy one day, just because, as you said, of his demeanor under pressure and what he's going to do. Now, coming in at number 4 is Aaron Rodgers of the New York Jets. And I think this one is a little bit interesting. Rodgers is 40 years of age, Lorenzo, Neal. He's coming off a year where he wasn't as good. People are going to argue for the lack of weapons. An aging Randall Cobb didn't have Devontae Adams last year with his year in Vegas. Allen Lazard, he made him a true number 1. People are going to argue that it's because he didn't have the weapons. So Rodgers at 4, Herbert at 5. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, you know what? I think from 3 to 5, I think you can move them around anywhere in 3 to 5 and think, okay, where can those guys, I don't think it's Because when you look at Rodgers is a guy who you look at what he's done in the past. You say, okay, he's earned that. He's earned that to be there up that high still. He still has some magic left and he still can do some things. But when you think about a guy like Josh Allen, we have seen Josh Allen at times make some critical mistakes. We've seen Josh Allen kind of pound his chest. And at the moment, I'm not saying the game got too big for Josh. I think sometimes Josh Allen has forced the game and at times
Yes.
said, I can do this. I'm going to just try to run over. And it's like playing golf. Golf, you cannot finesse. Golf, you can't say, oh, I'm mad. I'm going to go and just play. No, I look at the quarterback position, Borna. We're talking about, the quarterback, these quarterbacks that are elite. And you see, I think 3 through 5, I think you can move and switch guys around because when you think about Josh Allen, we're talking about at times we've seen him inconsistent and try to force the game. And you look at a guy like Aaron Rodgers. This guy is a Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer, but he hasn't been to the big show and he's been stopped. He's one game away 2 years, 3 years ago against the 49ers. So you look at him and you say, okay, is this guy going to take that next step? I know you talked about not having Devontae Adams last year and the different things he had to go through. But now he's with the Jets. He was with a team that can compete. He's with a team that has a good running game. He's with a team that has some up and coming stars and receivers. So it's going to be interesting just to see how it works out this year.
It's going to be super interesting. I don't think I have a problem with Justin Herbert being, in the 5 spot. I think I think Herbert could have been anywhere from 4 to 7 when you look at these upcoming rankings. So when I look at Justin Herbert in that 5 spot, it gives me optimism to see that he's probably going to be with the best coordinator he's had in his entire National Football League career. Now, the question is, do you think Kellen Moore's offense will help Herbert be open to running the ball more? This is one of the biggest things I want to see with Justin Herbert in this next year of his progression. Can he use his legs? Now, he's not going to overwhelm you with the speed, but he has these huge, long strides. I remember, 2 years ago, the Chargers were hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday Night Football, and Justin Herbert rushed for almost over 100 yards, and he won that game because of his legs. Now, let's not forget the fractured rib cartilage Herbert suffered in week 2, right? All the way back in week 2 last year, completely impacted how Herbert could affect the game as a runner. That's why they wanted him getting the ball out quickly. They wanted him to, preserve getting impact, getting hit by guys. And that's why he was throwing the ball 55, 60 times a game. As long as Justin Herbert stays healthy, Lorenzo, Neal, I think his scramble rate should return to his 2021 levels. Remember, I talked about that Steeler game. He rushed for 90 yards. And if he scrambles more this season, I think it would be because of better health, not because of schematic changes from Joe Lombardi to Kellen Moore. But that's all predicated on the fact that can the Chargers still continue to effectively run the football? I digress, but I want to go back to Kellen Moore and talk about his importance because his best attribute is his creativity. What do you think he's going to bring to the table for Justin Herbert and specifically the Chargers offense? Can they, because Herbert is so good that he made an awful offense look formidable, right? Can Kellen Moore and Herbert just explode on the scene here?
Well, I tell you right now, I think it's going to be big this offseason. What did the Chargers do? Excuse me, physicality wise, training camp, and then you and I'll be out there, some training camps. I want to see how physical this team's going to be. I think you have to change the way that your team is perceived. You got a training camp with Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore needs to make sure that this offense has a mindset to be physical and run the ball and get downhill. And that's how you're going to get play action because you have Justin Herbert. When he can turn his back to the defense because of play action and you're running the ball, this guy has a cannon. He can throw the ball anywhere you want it. So now if you're running the ball, so I think it's going to be big training camp to make sure these guys can run the ball and run it with consistency. Because if I'm Kellen Moore, I want to be physical, but I also want to get Justin Herbert to the edge, to the perimeter. And what better way to do that than being able to run and then bootleg and get him outside to the edge? Because now he can run or pass. So if you get a tight end that can come across the middle, now you got those deep overs and those post routes and you're running the ball and now you get the bootleg. Justin Herbert, if you get him outside of the pocket, that safety has to stay home because and the linebackers know they're too slow. So Justin Herbert can hurt you with his feet. So I think Kellen Moore, I really believe that you're going to see a more zone stop a stretch offense, but you're going to see this team with Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator. I'm telling you, Borna, I think they're going to move the ball and move the pocket a lot more this year.
That's the hope, right? That's the hope. It's pretty absurd to me that the Chargers were able to clinch a playoff berth with an offense that, averaged 4 or 5 yards per play and a defense that was kind of perplexed for most of the year. I think that goes to show you how freaking talented Justin Herbert was. He dragged an anchor all the way to the postseason, and they should have won a playoff game too if it wasn't for some late game shenanigans and a defense collapsing. And the Chargers, they also have a little over $12 million left in cap space as we head into training camp. So I think Tom Telesco and company have left a little bit of financial wiggle room in terms of, do they want to make some additions in season? Do they want to see how the year's going? And then they can kind of refine the edges, giving them some, flexibility. But we already know the MO of this Chargers team, fellow listeners of Bleav in Chargers. Make sure you guys go check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Bleav in Network, as well as Lorenzo on Twitter and Instagram. And here's the truth. The core of this team is intact, and the core of this team hasn't changed. The Chargers have who they need at wide receiver in Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. They have who they need at quarterback. They have a great offensive line that's looking even healthier now, and they added to that in the draft. They have a defense, a secondary led by the best safety in the National Football League in Derwin James, an all-pro corner who they signed who's looking to have a bounce-back year in J.C. Jackson, a great pass-rushing tandem in Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. They added Eric Kendricks, a UCLA Bruin, to shore up the middle of that linebacking core. They actually were really strong in special teams last year. The issue isn't the talent. The issue is maximizing that talent. And I think getting Kellen Moore in town will help that. And I think we talked about head coach Brandon Staley, Lorenzo. No, it's just now or never for head coach Staley. You know Staley more than I do. Great guy, great football mind. But at the end of the day, this is a wins-based business. It's a production and a results-oriented business. It's time to see this defense become that elite defense we brought Brandon Staley to. Do you think that's the key for this Chargers team this year? What if you're going to look at one thing about this team? There's a lot that constitutes its success. What is it going to be and why?
It's so simple for me, Borna. The one thing, if you said pinpoint one thing about this team that you would say,
I know what you're going to say,
that slows them down, I think it's going to be consistency. I know you're thinking about the run game. I understand that.
I was.
But it's the consistency in everything. You look at them. At times they were giving up 4 and 5 yards of crack. Sometimes and then third down you couldn't get off the field. You look at offense. Offensively, sometimes it was a 3 and out. It had no consistency. Sometimes no rhythm. I think this team has just been inconsistent. You lost close games because of inconsistency. If you talk about a talent base and just where they're at, you're right. Staley needs to have this defense humming. He's got the talent on defense. You have the talent on offense. So what is the biggest deal on both sides of the ball? It's consistency.
Yeah, it's absolutely consistency, because we talked about this last year too, as we kind of preview training camp here in a few minutes, is, there was a lot of spurts and moments last year when you were watching Chargers football and you're like, come on, this is awesome. Can we see more of this? Like Austin Eckler breaking down a counter play, 75 yards, the defense playing good, stopping the run. But then there were times when you played teams like the Seattle Seahawks who didn't have more talent than you, that absolutely gashed you. You're like, what's going on here? Did the guys wake up on the wrong side of the bed? And I think a lot of consistency is related to coaching. Can you keep your guys on edge? Can you keep your guys' fire burning? Because the talent is there. There's no doubt. I also cover the San Diego Padres, Lorenzo, Neal, and they've been one of baseball's biggest disappointments. And they have an unbelievable amount of talent. But it's hard to wake up every single day and play well. So talk to me, Lo, when you were on some great Chargers teams, you were on some ones that weren't as good, or any other football team that wasn't as good. What was the key to some of your teams that were very talented, and the ones that were talented that were very consistent versus the ones that weren't consistent? Was it a coaching thing? Was it an ego thing with players? What do you think it was?
I think it's a little bit of both. And just like you alluded to with the Padres, you saw the Padres go on a run last year. You saw the team that they were like, oh man, look at this Padre team. It's destiny. And they already had some young guys. So everyone, guess what? You start reading the press clippings. You start seeing, man, how good you are. Coach Marty Schottenheimer used to say, you know what, you're never as good as they say you are, and you're never as bad as someone as the media tells you are. And sometimes you start reading those press clippings, and it starts to get to you, and you say, we were so close, we should have been there, we should have won that game, should have been in puff, and so you just think it's going to happen. It's work. You still got to put in the same work, if not more. You got to put more time in, because teams know who were the better teams, and like, look, this team is good. And you play down teams even when you're on a good team. And then next year you're down. The coaches in that playing scout would say, this team can hurt you.
Bingo.
This team is a good team. They just haven't found their magic weapon yet. Don't be the one. So you have to be prepared when you're playing. And yes, so it starts with coaching as well as players. Those leaders, the Khalil Mack. That's why you brought in a guy like Khalil Mack.
Yep.
This guy's got to be like, no, guys, we're not accepting this. No, defensive, we're not. Derwin James, secondary. You got to have those guys step up and be those guys. And that's why when you went out, 2 years ago and said, let's address the center position. Go to Green Bay, grab one of the best centers in the game. Go ahead and strengthen your offensive line. You want to have leaders on your team that's going to say, look, there is no excuses. We're not going to let letdowns. We're going to play consistent football, and we're going to get consistency, because that is the thing that's missing. If we're consistent, guys, we're tough out. If we're consistent, guys, and we're doing our job, and we're not breaking down, we are a tough out. And this Charger team, they are a very, very tough out if they're consistent.
They're also a tough out, let's be real, low, if they're healthy. And that's something
Yes.
we've still been waiting to see, from this team over the last 10, 20, 30 years. I mean,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but that 2006 team, were you guys were relatively healthy that year, right?
Yeah.
And that has been an issue for this franchise. There hasn't been a shortage of talent with the Chargers. There has been a shortage of durability. I mean, you take a look at the defensive line last year and the offensive line. They lost Rashawn Slater early in that year. Corey Linsley
Yep.
got hurt. We were having to put guys, who were selling insurance onto the offensive line. And you take a look at the defensive line now, we were complaining about the inability to stop the run. And I think part of that should be blamed on Staley, but I think a part of that is out of his control with all the injuries. You take a look at the guys they brought in to help Brandon Staley. Sebastian Joseph Day missed a lot of time. Austin Johnson, who was really good for the Giants 2 years ago, missed a lot of time. Morgan Fox, they got a guy in Ogbania from UCLA. They have some good names. Can they stay on the field? Because if they're able to do so, I have all the confidence that Staley's going to be able to get the most out of these guys. But it's hard when you have guys who should be practice squad players needing to start a Sunday night game against Kansas City. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. And the Chargers are going to really need health this year because they have a tough schedule. Obviously, the AFC West is a tough division. And then you got to play teams, like the Buffalo Bills. You got to play the NFC East this year, the Cowboys, the Eagles. You got some tough games that this Charger team is going to have. And I think the Chargers should feel as if they should be confident going to most of those games if they are healthy. But listen, I'm really looking at the defensive line this year. I'm looking for, a roster and a defensive line that is angry, a team that does not want opposing teams to allow to run the ball down their throats, a defensive line that I want Justin Herbert to go talk to this defensive line and say, hey guys, I want the ball in my hands more this year. I'm relying on you four, you five guys to allow me to have the ball more in my hands because my success is correlated to you four. And that's a link that people aren't talking about, right, Lo? We talked about this. If teams are running down the Chargers' throat, they're going to lose the time of possession battle. They're going to cause Staley's defense to get tired, and they're going to cause Justin Herbert just be playing with his hair on the sidelines all game. How important is the Chargers? We talk about their ability to run the ball, but more importantly, their ability to stop the run is going to take them far this year. Tell me I'm wrong.
Oh, no, you're right. You hit the nail on the head. When you're looking at this team and you think about what it's going to take commitment by everyone. And when you're talking about the defense, you're saying, hey, look, guys, we got to get stops. We get people off the field. We get off the field because when you let long drives happen and sustained drives, your opposite team, your opposing team, that gives you more injuries. Now guys are tired, they're fatigued, and now they're playing with, tired. And now you got your knee in a bad position because your body's you're getting bent over the wrong way because you're out of shape, you're tired. So when guys get out there and they get out there on the field and you have these long drives, that sustained drives, especially for offenses, because offenses are now dictating their will and they're moving and creating a new line of scrimmage and moving you off the ball, more than likely defensive guys get hurt. When you look at quick 3 and outs, when you start seeing defense that get 3 and out, you more and less like you see offense because guys are reaching, they're in bad positions, they're out of position, they're trying to fight because they're getting ran through. That's when offensive guys get. When you're an offensive team and you're moving the ball and having consist, that's when you're wearing out the defense. So it's imperative. So you're asking how imperative? It's very imperative that this defense and the defensive front, that they contain the run, that they get teams in 3rd and long and not 3rd and manageable. They got to play with their heads, their hair on fire, because you want to give the ball back
Bingo.
to that offense and let them score some points for you.
Man, that's the hope, right? And I really want to, it would be nice to watch some Charger games this year and knowing that we've won the game heading into the second half. We never got that last year. The Chargers won 10 games, but outside of that Rams game, when they weren't even playing Matthew Stafford, every game was a nail biter. And fortunately for the Chargers, more than less went in their direction. And that's why they clinched a postseason berth. I go back to that week 9 game against the Cardinals, right? They go for 2. Staley puts it on the line, and they convert. But too many close games and too many games where the Chargers had leads and they allowed teams to come back into the games. There needs to be an anger played with the Chargers this year. An anger. I never saw that anger last year. If they go up 21-0, have no mercy. Go up 49-0. Bayern Munich, one of the best soccer teams in the world, they just beat a team today, Lorenzo, Neal, 27-0. Are you kidding me? That's
football.
ruthless.
That's a football score. Yes,
that's a football score. That's a ruthless, no mercy score. And I think that needs to be instilled more in this locker room. If you're up 28-3, I don't care. You're not comfortable, because if you went up 28-3, the other team can outscore you 28-3. And that should always be the mindset. And I think that is something. These are some of these intangible things that you don't see on the field that need to be instilled in these players more. So that's one big thing I'm looking for off the field. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you made a valid point, and I remember when you're talking, you just kind of struck a chord. The reason why we were so tough, and the reason why we did those things in 2006 and 3, and in 2005 and 2007, 8, is because of physicality.
Bingo.
You got to realize you had guys on offense. You knew that Chris Dillman, you knew that me, fullback, coming downhill, and we would impose our will.
Dogs.
We knew we were going to lay you out. We knew that I was going to break you. Guys were like, man, slow down. We would double when Chris Dillman and friggin', Nick would come off and double team and ace block or trade block down, and they would just move guys 5-6 yards off the ball and just grind him and get on top of him, and they would fall on top of him. You're like, get up, he's punching, trying to get up, and you start wearing their butt out. That's what this team doesn't have. So when you go and you play, even though you're playing a team, those guys get paid too. When you're physical, guys want the game over. If you're you just say, okay, boom, you're scoring. Like their team said, man, you ain't did nothing. They don't respect you. Like, okay, cool, you scored you got a long bomb. They'll come back and fight back in. Okay, 3 and out. So they're like, look, you ain't nothing. Now all of a sudden you catch them with a big play. So you don't give them any fear. They have not seen your physicality. When you have not hit a guy and laid them out and continue, like you're talking about that dog that like you're talking about 27-0 that scored today, because when they had them down, they strangled them. When you got them down, they said, I'm cutting your head off. That's what this team needs. It needs to say, okay, I'm beating the team. Now, how are we going to close this team? How are we going to make this team quit? Because I'm telling you, you can make teams quit. And that's what the Chargers have not done. They don't make teams quit, and they let teams stick around. And that's why these teams don't respect. And that's the attitude you're talking about that needs to change. That's the attitude that got to come on defense and offense, special teams, that teams say, we're going to quit. We're calling uncle. We're waving the white flag.
Preach. Listen, there's nothing for me to say there. I couldn't agree with you more. And Charger fans, we don't have an answer for you. I mean, time will tell. We will see.
Right.
And I think we'll know pretty early on in the year. Injuries aside, of course, that plays a role. But I think what I'm particularly going to be interested to is just the edge that this team plays, right? The energy that this team plays with. I'm not looking at wins or losses at first. I know it's a results-based business, but how is this team playing? Are they angry?
Right.
Do they want to be the ones pushing you around, or do they want to be pushed around? And I think if the answer is what we want, the Chargers are going to be a playoff team. But that's a very key distinguisher. They have to do that. Besides that, Lo, the next time we'll be chatting, training camp will be on our way. I know you'll be there. I may also make an appearance at training camp. And I think it starts with training camp, right? It doesn't start in September. Day 1 of training camp, I know we want to protect our players, but let's see a physical training camp this year. Let's see some pads engaging. I think, I understand the safety of the NFL is very important. It always should be, but I think it's also taken away from a little bit of the edge and the physicality that we need some of these guys to develop that identity with that translates into success. So, Lo, let our viewers know how training camp is. Is there a little bit more of an aggression in training camp versus last year? I think that's going to take this team a long way, my friend.
Oh, without a doubt. I'm gonna tell you, the worst thing Staley can do is say, guys, we're gonna practice smart. You can say you want to practice smart, and he said we're gonna practice hard. We're gonna practice smart. I want guys hydrated, but I'm gonna tell you what, guys, this is gonna be a different training camp. This is gonna be a physical train. I'm telling you right now, if the Chargers want to go in the playoffs and if they want to go deep,
if they want to make noise in the playoffs, they gotta win some playoff games now, Lo.
And it's gotta be physical. This training camp has to be physical because you're a soft team and you're a team that gets injured because then you wait to the regular season and you try to turn it on. Coach Staley has to plan this thing the right way and start getting guys mentally ready to do 9-on-7, make all the offensive linemen put knee straps on and make sure they put the knee braces on. You got to have a physical training camp to set the precedent. You have to get guys physical, but guys need to be talking and saying, guys, this shouldn't be about coaches want to make it physical. It's about you wanting to make it physical because you're the one getting paid. You're the one that's got to go out there on that field and kick somebody's ass because the season's going to start and everyone's saying, oh, this is a finesse team. Oh, this team doesn't know how to finish. This is what you want to do. So you want to turn this training camp into physical. I can't wait for training camp. Woo, Borna, I'm getting fired up. Let's go, baby.
I love it, Lo. I couldn't agree more, brother. It should be a really, really interesting time. And again, time will tell. Let's see how it goes. But Chargers fans, make sure you guys go check us out on the Bleav Network. This is Bleav in Chargers. That's Lorenzo, Neal. I'm Borna and Nazari. Cheers to a very successful, optimistic, and fruitful year for the Los Angeles Chargers. We are signing out, everyone. God bless. Be well. Cheers.